Excel y yo, la cara. ¿Qué pasa?
No, ya, no, completo.
No tengo que sacarlo ahí. Ahí, ya, déjalo ahí, déjalo ahí. Yo puedo cerrarla aquí.
¿Qué va a pasar?
Espérate, ¿qué? Eso es como eso.
Okay, Robert, you told me that when you're ready. It's okay, we have to start now. So, today, we have an activity. At the first time, a welcome, teacher, invite person, partner or college, in that case, Jesus Maria Perez, Benjamin Vargas, Ana Gertrudia Sequies, our principal, Altagracia Frías Paredes. So, and Mariela Farrington, too. This moment, we have to share with you a nice activity in that moment. We have to talk about the principal person here, about Carla de Marchena. She is a person we had to develop her knowledge about that topic. A big topic is a conferencia in Spanish. You go. Say, conferencia magistral en el uso de las TICs, en la enseñanza de nuestro idioma inglés. So, we have to talk about that topic because it's very necessary to implement in our school, right? For that reason, our teacher and student is necessary, have to, it's a model that we have to implement, have to get another knowledge, right? So now we have to talk about Carla, her biography. She has a nice background. Applause for her, please. So my partner Wilkin read about biography Carla de Marchena, Urenio. Applause one more time.
Well, hello everybody. As you know, my name is Wilkin Santos, and working here with my partner Sebastiana. It's a pleasure to me to be here on this morning and share with you and this activity we have today. And I would like to read this biography that is interesting. Carla was born in the city of Santo Domingo 28 years ago. She attended all 12 years of schooling at the Bilingual School International School of Santo Domingo. Once graduated, she attended in Cucamonga University, where she earned her bachelor in general psychology. Moving to the educational group, Carla began an internship at a specialized center that worked with neurodiversity. an internship at Coral Modern School. Optimal Learning Center opened the door to becoming in kindergarten co-teacher, where she worked with classroom inclusion and English instruction for 3 years. To complement years of informal English tutoring at school, she earned her TICs certificate in 2019, which supports her virtual tutoring journey during the pandemic. Today, Carla coordinates an English classroom at STEAM Classroom and served as the Global Connection Group liaison for the DREAM project.
Thank you. Thank you, Ricky. So, we have the aim in our participating today, because we have a UB too. We have to learn, right? In that moment, Carla de Marchena, she is here for a big purpose, right? That we have to learn today here. You have to implement your classroom, please. We have to implement, because it's necessary that the student to learn, to teach, to use, to implement a different I want to say another word in English, say herramienta tool. So it's very important. So tablet, PC, and this one too, or the other. The important thing, remember, we have to give advice, right? About the impossible that the student to implement. So the first time we have to implement first, right? Thank you very much. The important thing we have to learn. Carla de Marchena Aurelio with us. Applause for her. Carla, over there or here?
I'll go over there.
Okay.
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you for that presentation. I'm going to go ahead and start because I want to be mindful of the time. But tagging off of the presentation that was just made for me, something that I want to stress as educators is always going back to the word purpose. Whenever we implement something in a classroom or whenever we bring in a tool, we're doing it because there's a purpose tied to it. We're not doing it because it's just fun. We're not doing it because it was given to me so I have to do it. We're implementing it because it ties to a learning purpose. And so today I've prepared this presentation for you on ICT use in secondary education. As you guys already know, en español, TIC. In English, in information and communication technologies. In secondary education, we're talking about kids that range from the ages of 13 all the way to 18. That's a big age gap. And so today I'm going to walk you guys through how to use them, but also to understand the group that we're using it for. In my experience, I've worked with kids in kindergarten, I've worked with kids in second grade, I've worked with kids in middle school, high school. There are big developmental differences, no? The way that you use an application like WhatsApp, for example, would you use WhatsApp for a kid who's 5 years old? You probably wouldn't because there's no purpose. But would you use it for someone who's 17-year-old? You would probably use it, especially during pandemic. So I'm gonna walk you guys through the population that you guys have, which you guys are already experts on, and what are some of the tools that can really aid in their learning. And so this is going to be our index First, what are ICT tools? A description of the population that we're working with, which is secondary education. Safety requirements for ICT use, favorable or unfavorable use of ICT tools, our purpose behind ICT tool use, and finally, a question and answer section. When we talk about ICT, we're talking about tools that have the purpose of aiding in communicating, creating, disseminating, storing, and managing information. That means you have a way to research information, you have a way to present information, and you have a way to store information. So when we talk about a tool that helps us in researching, we could be talking about Google as a search engine. The application itself could be Chrome. When we talk about an application that helps us present information, we're talking about Microsoft PowerPoint. We're talking about Canva, which is a very popular application because it's so fun. I'm using Canva for my presentation. And when we talk about storing information or disseminating information, when we present, it's the same thing as disseminating, sure. But when you have social platforms like maybe Facebook, or you have other learning environments where you can post on a forum, that's a way of also disseminating information. And then finally, when we talk about storing and managing, we have really good apps like Dropbox, for example, which allows for cloud storage. So when we do things, when we're talking in groups, or maybe you have different reading groups that you have leveled readers for, you store it in Dropbox, you have access, you divide it by the group that you're working with. When I went at the first part of my presentation, and I told you guys that we always have to talk about purpose, the important thing is that this is something that Salustiana mentioned, is that sometimes we're forced to use applications in school because the school bought it, and now I have to use it, and I have to try it out. Or maybe we're just interested in a website. How do I use it? Why do I have to try it out? The purpose that we as educators are trying to bear in mind is that even though an application or a device seems like fun or recreational, there's a literary use behind it. Because after all, we're English teachers, no? So if we're teaching English as a second language especially, something that our populations in DR have that is especially important is that a lot of them are behind in their own native language. So when you're not as literate as you should be in your native language, if I'm not doing so well in Spanish, the tools that I need to learn English as a second language might be a little bit more particular to what I'm trying to learn. And so when we're trying to teach literacy for adolescents, we have to make it fun, we have to make it smart, but we also have to make it responsible. So as teachers, when teachers are digitally literate, that means that you know how to use the tools. When you've taught yourself how to use Microsoft PowerPoint, or Canva, or Dropbox, when you're digitally literate and understand how to integrate it into the curriculum, these approaches can lead to higher order thinking skills. They can provide creative and individualized options for students to express their understandings and leave students better prepared to deal with ongoing technological change in society and in the workplace. What does that mean? I'm not just trying to teach a kid how to read, or how to speak, or how to present themselves. I'm teaching them that they have a social responsibility when they use something like a technological device. I'm teaching them that integrated into this fun game that we're playing, you're actually just learning by doing. And I think that's a big idea in modern education these days. You're learning by doing. You're no longer sitting there receiving information. Now I expect you to be an active participant. in your learning process. Something that I want to highlight here, integrated into the curriculum. What does that mean? That means that if I am teaching using when I'm teaching while using a curriculum, so maybe I use the American Guide for Teaching English. That means that I have topics that I have to go through, right? So I can just start teaching parts of speech and building on like hard questions that are more like critical thinking questions. Like, what happened in the story? What is your understanding of that? No, I need to go back to very concrete things. And I need to work on vocabulary so that you're able to actually express the knowledge that you have. When you integrate a tool into the curriculum, what it means is that that is supposed to complement a skill. If I'm trying to develop pronunciation, for example, and I'm using an application such as Reading A through Z. Do you guys know Reading A through Z? Well, you're gonna know Reading A through Z. They're leveled reader books, and they take you level by level, and you have to record whatever you're reading on the screen. And so as a teacher, when you see that the program is telling you that you're pronouncing each word correctly, you know that you've hit a learning target. I wanted to practice pronunciation. I have an application that's helping me through the process because maybe I have 40 students. That's a good use of the technology. But if I'm just asking you, well, you know what, guys, like we have 20 minutes left. Why don't you guys just go on the iPad and just go on YouTube? What are your students gonna do? They're gonna go on YouTube, but they're not gonna be playing like Peppa Pig in English. They're not gonna be playing educational things. You have to specify the purpose. That is how you integrate something into your curriculum. And I also want to highlight higher order thinking skills. So it is my understanding everybody here teaches English, or at least a foreign language. So that means that you guys are educators. When we talk about higher order thinking skills, what are we saying? Is anyone familiar with those terms? When we talk about higher order thinking skills, we're talking about the way that kids process information. Not kids, the youth, how they process information. This is also a part of Bloom's taxonomy, and Bloom's taxonomy in education is super groundbreaking work because it helps us understand what do I need to start teaching a language or to start teaching anything, and where do I go as the student is actually growing. Lower order thinking skills are remembering, understanding, and applying. That means that you are memorizing information. That means that I'm looking at a word and I remember the symbols for that word, even though I don't necessarily understand the meaning for it. Once you're past that stage, you're moving on to higher order thinking, analyzing, evaluating, and creating. So if we have, for lower order thinking skills, we have questions like who, what. When you have a text and somebody's asking you, who was the main character? You know you can find that in the text very easily. It doesn't require a lot of thinking. It was said to you right there. But when we're talking about analyzing, evaluating, and creating, we're asking you to answer questions such as how, why, what for. And the reason that it is doing that is that a 5-year-old whom you're teaching to read, for example, the developmental expectations for a 5-year-old are that maybe he can tell you how many there were, maybe they can tell you who did that, but they don't understand the why behind it. When we're talking about these tools in secondary education, we're talking about kids who we're teaching to research, we're teaching to be independent, we're teaching them to create their own ideas, and we're also teaching them how to present it. Because the cool thing about ICT use is that it's just another creative way for kids to express themselves. So I had a lot of fun doing this very simple presentation on Canva. And I'm 28. And so I can imagine what that's like for a 13 or a 14-year-old when you're all in a collaborative platform and you get to present information in the way that speaks to your personality. Sometimes, as educators, we want to be stuck on, you have to finish the work because you have to do it. You never have to do things in life because you have to do them. You have to find why it's good for you to do them. You don't just do things because someone tells you to. And I think that's also a good reflection for us as educators. When I give you this app and I give you the trust to use this app, is because I'm trusting you to find your way and to express your ideas in a way that's very different, okay? Do you guys have any confusions about higher order thinking and lower order thinking? Was that clear? Higher order thinking, these are the hard questions. These are the hows, the whys. Lower order thinking, we're talking about who, what, okay? Another really important thing to remember about our age group is that even though these are suggestions for how much screen time adolescents should be getting, we know that that's not the reality, because we know that we as adults, we don't get a minimum of 2 hours every day on our phones. We get probably like 4 to 6. And so if we as adults are having issues controlling and using technology tools, imagine how difficult it must be for adolescents to not want to use their phones. Remember that when we're talking about kids ranging from the ages of 12, 13, all the way to 18, this part of the brain, the prefrontal, it hasn't developed. So they're very impulsive. They want to do what they want to do. They want to explore. They're curious. They want to challenge you a little bit to see if they can get away with it. And then they'll bring it back and then they'll say, I'm sorry, I knew better. And they do know better, but it's just that their bodies are not able yet to do things just as they're supposed to do it as an adult would. And so these are the guidelines. We're supposed to get, as teens and adults, we're supposed to get 2 to 4 hours of screen time. And that's really a recommendation for our eyesight. Because I don't know if you guys have noticed, but the use of glasses is increasing. People never used to wear this many glasses before. But now we have so many things that we're actually, we have so many screens that we're constantly attending to. There are definitely going to be consequences for ourselves. So when we're using ICT tools in school, super, super important. If you have a kid that you know that at home is always on the tablet, maybe don't give him so much screen time when he's at school. It's not that you're not letting him have privileges or have fun with it. It's that there's a developmental purpose behind what you are trying to do. It's that you understand that maybe this kid has so much screen time at home that when he comes to school, he's not retaining anything because you're making him write and you're making him read off paper. And when you change the media, when you change from paper to doing a PowerPoint presentation, you're losing skills. When you see that our handwriting is not as nice and neat as it was when we were in high school, because I can say that. I don't know what happened to my handwriting, but suddenly it's not as great. You're losing fine motor skills. And so even though I'm here giving you guys a lesson or a conference on ICT use, something that I always try to stress is don't leave behind the organic knowledge that you're supposed to bring into the classroom. Keep your kids writing, keep them drawing, keep them researching from books. Kids don't know how to use dictionaries anymore because you can just go on Google. That's crazy. That doesn't happen anymore. So try to switch it up. Technology, like Sebastiana said, is a tool. It is not something that replaces other mediums that we have, okay? If we're going to use ICTs responsibly, or ICT tools responsibly, we need to gather some guidelines. We're not just gonna ask the Ministry of Education to give us 50 tablets and then just run for it, go with it, and it's all gonna be fine. It's not gonna be fine. The reason why it's not gonna be fine is because you have kids from different age groups that have this new device that's so exciting and there's so much to do with it that I literally don't know what to do with it. I'm gonna go on Google, I'm gonna try this app, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do that. Something that I think the ministry is working on right now that I think is excellent is trying to make the connections privatized. So that means that there are certain websites that you cannot access. If you're using the school address, the school router, there are some websites that are going to be blocked. That's absolutely perfect. That's what should be happening. But that should have happened before we gave kids tablets. Probably. Something else that's going to happen when you have things like applications that give access to forums. For example, if you use Facebook and you have a group just for certain students, they can still use Facebook to contact and be contacted by other people. That's not safe. And that's also not a purposeful use of the tool that you've been given. And so these are some general guidelines that were shared by UNESCO. And it's that the safe and responsible use of ICTs means that children are able to fully engage with the multitude of positive opportunities they provide. ICT tools are meant to open a world of resources. There's no doubt about that. But in order for that to happen in a healthy and in a safe way, these things are going to be kept in mind. Protecting children from risk and harm online, improving opportunities for children online through improved understanding, and ensuring prioritization of ethics and privacy in data collection and sharing. What this means is that, have you guys heard of digital citizenship?
Sorry.
Digital citizenship. Anybody heard of it? Okay. Digital citizenship are these set of principles that basically teach both teachers and students what they need in order to enter the virtual world and how to basically behave in it. So it's like a virtual constitution. Some of the digital citizenship principles are that I'm going to get a passport, because if I use something like the internet, I have access to things that are happening in Korea. I have access to things that are happening in Africa. I have access to bond and create contact with people whom maybe I would have never met. And so the principles behind digital citizenship are that you need to be respectful of others and how you speak to them. You're not going to engage in behaviors that are harassing. And of course, these are things that we as educators, along with your tech teachers, so this is for you guys as English educators, but along with technology teachers, all of these fundamentals have to be applied. Because if your technology teacher is not using the devices safely, who's to say that your students are going to be doing the same with you? And you want to keep your lessons very centered, okay? The ICT tools that we regularly employ and why. I'm going to keep this part a little bit more participatory, so I would like you guys to share. Based on what you guys already understand ICT tools to be, what are some of the tools that you guys use regularly and that you understand they have a purpose with your lessons? I'm going to be picking people. Yes.
Yeah. I use PowerPoint. It's
Yeah.
one of the apps I use with my students, and it's for presentations.
Excellent.
One day I make them create a dialogue, conversation, and they created and added some images and things like that to make it more dynamic. So that's one that I usually use.
And how do you think that made your lesson that much better or that much more memorable?
They like looking at images. They like creating. So maybe that's what makes it more memorable.
So she's identified that her students are more drawn to visuals, and that on things like PowerPoint, you have the benefit that you can animate these visuals. So of course, you're making it more exciting, you're making it a lot more relatable to kids because they want to be part of that. That's a good use of PowerPoint. Does anybody else have other tools that they use regularly? Yes, in the back.
Yes, I use a live worksheet. I put register in that page, and it is good for students because when I send them the link, they go to the page and they fill the evaluation or the exercise, and they feel happy when they get a high score. They say, oh, I did it, they feel happy. And they can see the images, and it is better for them. I think they can learn when they see.
Yeah, definitely. And when you say live worksheet, I don't know that page, but I'm assuming just from the name that it's
So
literally a worksheet that is online.
It
and
is
it's live.
good.
And so they get to fill it out in groups or individually?
Individual.
Individually. And
Yes.
then they
I
get
send
their
them
score.
the link, and then they fill it, and at the same time, I receive the qualification, and I receive what they did. It is so good.
And so when is a good time to use the live worksheet and when is a good time to use the paper worksheet?
I can download it by PDF too. I can use it in the classroom, or if I teach them a topic, I tell them later I'm going to send you by WhatsApp the link, then you fill it and you send it to me.
And what are the kids that you think benefit the most from using those live worksheets?
Sorry?
Which group of kids, in your opinion, benefit the most from using those live worksheets?
Teenagers.
Teenagers. Okay, interesting. And I think something that you guys have referenced is also the fact that we're using these with teenagers because they have the skills necessary to use PowerPoint. If we have the younger kids, you're not going to have a 5, 6, 7-year-old make a PowerPoint because they don't have the skills necessary to do that. Why? Because they're not necessary yet. Because it's not a safe space for them to start using those skills. Thank you. Anybody else? What other applications or websites do you guys use that have really made your classes much more rich? Yes.
I used to work with the teenagers with Canva. This app is really amazing for them because they can create PowerPoints in a different way. And also they can look for a lot of information and funny ways to create their the things that they want. Because sometimes as teacher we want something but they want another one. And we have to respect the ideas they have. So also, as Joanna, I used to work with live worksheets because it's really amazing. And you can look for the links and also to send them depending on the topic that we're working on. And in this case, for example, I used to use live worksheets when they are working with a new grammar. And it is a different way to know if they are learning the topics we are teaching in the classroom. Because sometimes in the classroom we don't have enough time to see if the class is going on well. So this is a way to give them some homeworks or to do some practice at home or in school. And also, of course, it's better if we use them with teenagers because in the case that we teach English with primary school, we can do it, for example, using PowerPoint, but with them in the class. For example, what do you think this is going to be the correct answer? But with them in the class, not at home, because sometimes there are some parents that they don't know how to use ICT.
Yeah. And you mentioned something super important, which is time. She mentioned time. When I was in school, and it was the only school I attended from first grade to 12th grade, my school was primarily in English, and I had Spanish as a subject. I understand that some of you guys probably have it the other way around. You have Spanish as your main language of instruction, and then you have English as just a subject. For some of you, maybe you're doing private tutoring jobs, and that means that at most you have 45 minutes to teach a class. And so something that you mentioned, which is time, is that it's super important for you to understand what your teaching priorities are. Because sometimes you understand that the kids have already, they wrote it, they spoke about it, they heard about it. Now I don't have to necessarily know if you know how to spell it perfectly. Maybe this is my time if you know how to use it in a sentence. And so finding our specific learning goal for using these tools is super, super important. And I want to stress something that is very shared in education, but that in psychology it has been cleared up. So how many of you guys have heard that kids or that people have preferred learning styles? So maybe you're more of a visual learner, maybe you're more of an auditory. It's not true. In psychology, it's just been cleared up that it's not that you're better at something. It's that if you practice something more, you're naturally going to become better at it. So if all of your classes are listening and listening and listening, maybe I don't like it, but maybe I become a better learner by listening to things because I've practiced it so much. And so when we have kids who you're not able to tie in the medium that you're trying to teach, so if you're doing something visual or auditive and the kid is not really liking it, they have a preference for it or they don't. But it doesn't mean that they're necessarily going to be better at it. So for us as educators, it's about using these tools to also add different components that you're trying to evaluate. Live worksheets are great. If you're always doing live worksheets, are they going to be great? If you're always doing them?
Sometimes they get bored.
Yeah.
They get boring. They get boring and you're not using the other skills that you're actually trying to teach. If you're always doing PowerPoints, and PowerPoint is the only way that you're allowing your kids to demonstrate their learning, is it going to be effective? Why? What are some of the things that you're not going to be working on as foreign language teachers if you're always doing a PowerPoint? Yeah.
I think it is because not all students learn the same way. And also because we have to try to develop the other skills that we look for in languages. Because it's not just reading or writing, it's also speaking and listening. So if with a PowerPoint, we can develop writing and reading, but what is going on with speaking and listening?
Exactly. So if you're not speaking, you're not listening, those are the skills that you are not using. That's super important when you guys prepare your lesson plans and you're doing the ICT tool integration. Make sure that you know that you're not always doing this every single day. And if I'm not doing it every single day, what is the other skill that I'm trying to reinforce? There's one application that has been having this boom in education that I didn't even include it, but as I was listening to her speak, I was like, do you guys know Minecraft? Minecraft.
It's a game.
It's a game, and it's actually been turned into a learning game. If you guys are familiar with Minecraft are these digital blocks. And basically you can create, yeah.
In that way, I have used block. It's like Minecraft.
Uh-huh.
They can play with a grammar or a word that they can choose
what they already see. If
Right.
I'm working with to be, they have to be looking for the very be, are, is. But if I'm working with the simple past of some word, they give a list of words and they have to look for the simple past. But it's a game. At the end, they're enjoying the class, but they are students at the same time.
Yeah.
And they're not getting bored. But I don't like to use it all the time because they're gonna get bored to use the same tools. I used to change this.
Thank you, exactly. And so, as educators, we're trying to teach English as a whole language. And what does that mean? That you're trying to integrate content with the symbol, with associations. You're not just teaching the verb phrases, for example. You're trying to add a meaning, maybe you're trying to visualize a scenario so that they visually remember it. With tools like Minecraft, where kids have to basically build their characters, they have to make a story, and they get to digitally present it. Which are the learning targets that you guys think would be possible with the use of Minecraft? If I'm creating a character, and I get to play out a story, what could a learning objective be for someone who's trying to teach English? You could say, like, maybe describe the settings around you. Maybe you could say, do a description of the main characters in your story. It's understanding that everything is a playing game. And anything that you're doing just as a job is going to feel just like a job. So especially with teenagers, you have to teach them that it has to be fun. I'm going to present some tools for collaboration. A lot of these, I admit, you guys probably know, but they're a good refresher because sometimes you forget that you have so many tools that you can actually use in your day-to-day learning, okay? So, first up, we have Google Drive. Who uses Google Drive for teaching purposes? What are the benefits of using Google Drive?
It's very important to use Google Drive for the students because they can practice. And long time, I use like a practice for my dictation. I send to them a document and they practice the vocabulary, and when they come back to school, I give attention to them and they can do it very well.
And I'm assuming that the reason or the how as to how you're doing that is that when you guys go to Google Drive, you guys all know Microsoft Word, right? Everybody knows Microsoft Word. So you have Word, you also have PowerPoint, and you also have Excel. When you go on Google Drive, you have basically an integrated Microsoft all in one platform. And it's all cloud shared. What does cloud shared mean?
You can share it with someone else.
Yeah, you can share it with someone else. It's in a shared space. So if you give access to anyone else, specifically if they have a link or if they have access to the file, they can edit the things that you give them access to. And so if you were doing a dictation, for example, you would go to Google Drive and you would open the Google Word, and it would come up just like the application on Word would. But you see all of these names on the corner, and those are the names of the people that are connected to that specific file. And so maybe you're all doing a dictation, maybe you're all doing different worksheets, maybe you're all collaborating on the same slide. If we have a team presentation and we want to do it on the seasons, you go to Google Drive, you open PowerPoint slides, and it will open the shared document that only the people that have access to can use. Maybe I'm going to be working with the backgrounds, maybe you're going to be working with the titles, maybe you're going to be doing content. Super cool, I really recommend it, and it has a lot of storage. So, 360 Learning. I'm going to step here and click a link. 360 Learning is a platform where you guys, it's kind of like a mix between Google Drive and something like a forum, like kind of Facebook would work. So the way that 360 learns is that you're able to create courses. So if you're doing, for example, you have a class of 25 students, and 5 of them are going to be working on critical thinking questions, and maybe another are going to be working on grammar, and maybe others are going to be working on verbs. You can create specific courses where just those groups of students are going to be working with your slides. And so it has the little comment boxes that you guys saw on the side are comments that your students are able to leave. So when they really mean collaborative learning, it means that you're teaching your students how to give feedback. You're teaching them how to use a forum in a correct way. So, hey, I liked your presentation. Or, hey, I noticed that you missed some of the punctuation marks in your presentation. You might want to go back and change that. You guys saw that they highlighted and they were able to correct some of the grammar. And in tools like Google Drive, you have a history version of all of the edits that actually took place. So if I change the word that for this, it's going to pop up that Gaia edited that for this. And so it's a way for also seeing how students review your work. When you guys go back and you have like 50 copies of things that your students have written, this is the same thing, but you can do it online. And it's just going to be automatically saved. Okay? Google Classroom. Google Classroom is one that branches into collaboration and communication. Are you guys familiar with Google Classroom? What do you think are some of the benefits of using Google Classroom? Why was it good to use? Yes.
So it really easy to understand and to you can write in what you want as a teacher, and then it's really easy to understand. The student can upload all the documents that you ask. For example, you can divide the option in different homework or items, so they can complete each of them separately. And then you can add a date that allow them to know the limit of the time they have to complete the homework.
Exactly. Google Classroom is super user-friendly, like you mentioned. And it's very, very cool because it integrates everything that you have in an actual classroom. So if you're doing grades, it will automatically calculate the grades that you assign for a presentation or maybe a poll. But it also has the integrated function of Google Meet. Do you guys know Google Meet?
Yes.
It's basically Zoom, but on Google. I like it better than Zoom, honestly, but it's only because I think it's so easy and it doesn't glitch as much. Sorry, Zoom. But I think Google Classroom integrated with a video function like that allows you to record, that allows you to keep track of everything. Why not use it maybe once a week and explore it with your students? Do you guys know like a flipped classroom methodology? Are you familiar with those terms? That's good, and in a way they do, but not quite. So a flipped classroom would be when students, instead of doing all of the reading and all of that in the classroom, they go home, they read about it, and when they come back to class, they just work and they present. That's a flipped classroom. So when we're here in DR, we have the opposite. You have to study all of this here, and you also have to present it, and you also have some homework. But when you do things like giving a child the autonomy to actually own whatever it is that they're learning and present as much as they can, because they're in charge of their learning at the end, tools like Google Classroom can actually give you a video format so that you're all able to record your lessons and also store them. I saw some yes. You have feelings.
So I think for us it's easier to use the way we can make a good use of the time in the classroom. Because when you give them the opportunity to do things at home, so when you ask for a homework activity, you're gonna have 3 or 4 students that completely exercise. The other won't do anything. The other student won't do anything. And this is a benefit we have.
So another kind of idea. Sometimes I used to use flip classes. I give them the topic, they search, and when they come back with work with the same topic, they get excited in the classroom.
And so I love what you're saying because it's really all about differentiation. When we differentiate for our students, we understand what they need for their learning. And we're adapting to those things that they need as well. And so maybe for your classroom it doesn't work because you understand beforehand, you already know that your kids maybe don't have the perseverance to stick to a task. Maybe they don't have assistance at home. Maybe they don't have access to tools at home as well. And so understanding your population is always going to be the first point of contact for anything you do with or without technology. But of course, as educators, we also have to set a standard for what we want in a classroom. And I think it's also a good opportunity to evaluate if my students aren't performing and they're not doing homework and they're not doing anything in class, what am I doing wrong? Taking those questions with you as well. Understanding maybe if I could use a different tool a few times a week, depending on the group, maybe I could have a different result, right? Yes.
So we have a real reason for that, because we spend almost 8 hours in class, a long, full-time class shift. But when the student left school, they don't want more class anymore at home. So they tired from school. This is a really difficult situation we face.
Thank you. Awesome. Let's keep it moving on to tools for communication. Tools for communication are those that allow you, anytime you communicate, you don't even have to really do anything. You guys have heard about how body language is the first sign of communication from somebody, right? So you don't really have to do anything. At any moment, you're communicating anything. Okay? And so when we speak of communicating, it doesn't have to be necessarily something that is a phone call. It doesn't have to be something that is written. It's simply a way for you to present information. Anytime you've presented something, you're communicating something. We have tools like Zoom and Google Meets, which Google Meet we already went over because it's integrated into the Google Classroom. But what has been your experience with the use of Zoom? Who uses Zoom? What's your experience with Zoom?
The time interrupting.
The time limit, right?
Yeah.
Uh-huh. So usually what is the time limit that Zoom gives you?
45.
40 minutes.
40 minutes. And you guys know if you're trying to really execute a full lesson virtually for teenagers in 40 minutes, good luck to you. Good luck to you. What are some of the things that Zoom allows you to do that at least aid in those 45 minutes, that kind of help you carry your class out? What are some of the things?
You can share some information through the screen,
Yeah.
which is really good. And then you can chat in the same way. I mean, you can give some explanation of the topic through the chat. That's many things you can do. So you can record.
Yes.
You can record it. So the meeting.
So it allows you to record the meeting in case you need to go back and review some things. But it also allows you to share the screen. So that means that whatever I present, you can also see. And anything that you have to present, I can also see. But I think the really distinctive thing about Zoom is also how it helps us curb behavior. How does Zoom help us with student behavior during our lessons?
closing and opening the microphone.
Yes. So,
It's okay, so he already said it.
yeah, so opening or closing the microphone. And also you have a feature that allows you to raise your hand if you actually want to participate. If you are, you've really had it with everyone, nobody's paying attention, Urano has his microphone open, you don't know who else is talking in the background, you can mute everybody. You can also kick someone out from the conversation, which is not, I don't recommend that in education. But if need be, Zoom allows you to make certain decisions around some of the students' behaviors so that you can kind of carry on with your class. Anything else you guys would like to highlight about Zoom? Because I know that during the pandemic, everybody went on WhatsApp and Zoom. And most of us educators didn't really know how to use Zoom. So especially during pandemic, what are some of the challenges that you guys faced when you started using virtual tools? What was hard about it? Yes, in the back.
Sometimes student is in the classroom, but they're not paying attention. They open the class, they are watching TV, or they are chatting, or doing something apart of class.
Yes.
It's hard working or get the behavior of students through Zoom or Google Meet, those kind of meetings.
And sometimes, hopefully it doesn't happen very often, but sometimes we're stuck with virtual meetings because maybe something happened at school, or maybe there's bad weather, or maybe, God forbid, we go through something like a pandemic again. Yes?
About the challenge,
Yes.
we have a different moment emotional.
Yeah.
It's a big challenge that we have to implement. It's as a human person, maybe we have to adaptation. Try to be it's a many questions about what we have to say about myself on the first time, because it's a big.
Yeah, it is super challenging, and some of the things that don't help us sometimes are things that are tied to infrastructure. If I don't have a good internet connection, I don't care what happens, Zoom is just not going to work. And so when we speak of introducing things like ICT tools into a classroom, the first thing I need to make sure is that I have good internet connection. Otherwise, I'm going to be frustrated all the time through Zoom and outside of Zoom. It just doesn't work. Yes.
We'll lack it, the devices will lack connection.
Exactly.
We don't have a proper place where to develop our classes. We need to let's say try. Most like we tried and we have a lot of fail. Many of the teachers they didn't know how to use the tools. They need to learn how to do it in a short time, which was really difficult.
Yeah, in Spanish, aprendimos sobre la marcha. It was just kind of like, I'm going to figure it out and see what works and what doesn't. And so now we've come to a point where we really understand how to use Zoom accordingly. But also something that I thought was super good about the tablets from the Ministry of Education are that they're locked. So you can't just download all of the applications that you want. Some things you're just not going to have access to because you only get to use it for this educational purpose. I saw a hand and I forgot it was.
Yes, I would like to add something according to what the teacher is saying. As a teacher and as a professional, if I identify that I'm weak about how to use ICT or about how to use a specific program or app, as a professional, I have to reflect. And I need to have a reflection. If I'm weak, I need to reinforce that part. I need to I don't know, to take online tools or look for help, whatever people that know more than me about how to use a specific app. Because as a professional, and nowadays, we need how to implement ICT in our classroom.
And the reason why that's so important is that even if we say that we still need to go back to organic skills and reading, writing, using books and all of that, the fact remains that the modern world is moving in a digital direction. That cannot be changed. And the only thing that you can do is to empower students by giving them the knowledge and the tools so that they use it accordingly. Because sometimes, and this is something, so working at the Dream Project where we have a Montessori, and most of our students, when they leave Dream Project at 3rd grade, they go off to public school. If they go off to public school, and I still see a very good student, and I would love, and that student's parents would love for him to have access to higher education or to private education. But in public school, I'm not getting taught how to use these tools. I'm at a disadvantage. You're setting that kid up for a disadvantage. He's going to have a lot more to compete for because I don't have access to internet and I don't have access to the tools and I don't have access to the tools and the applications to use that. If I have to write a college essay and I don't have the appropriate applications for that, I'm immediately at a disadvantage. And so whether we embrace them or we love them or we dislike them a little bit, remember that the cure is kind of in the dose. Anything can become a poison if you use too much of it, or if you use the appropriate measure, it can be a treatment, it can be a cure, it can be something that's complementary, okay? Oh, and WhatsApp. WhatsApp, another huge one during pandemic. Have you guys noticed some of the educational updates that they made? They're not like educational in that they advertise it like that, but they have a use in education. How has WhatsApp changed in a way that it can help education and secondary education? Yes.
I noticed that they make an upgrade that you can make a little group that you can send to the student what you need to work. It's like if you have those students that are strong, then you can work with them, you send them different kind of exercise and class, you work with them, but with the whole group the same things.
Yeah, so WhatsApp introduced communities. And they're different from groups in that the type of information that you can share is very different. It's a lot more monitored. And I saw hands, and I don't want to give a spoiler. I think it was your hand.
Yeah, and also something I can notice was that at the beginning, WhatsApp was just for making video calls with two people. But after, we could make video calls with more. So some days or in some classes, we could divide some groups and they could make different calls in that way that they weren't losing time. So for example, if you were given a class, you could take different groups and they could make different video calls in WhatsApp without being outside of Zoom. So we could be in both classes and in both apps at the same time.
Yes, and super, super important. They introduced something called polls. And now you get to send out a survey for people to answer inside of the chat. And as a teacher or also for parents communication, that's been super, super important because at Dream we use the WhatsApp polls to do simple things. For example, like if you have to sign up for a parent-teacher conference, how many of you can do it at this time? How many of you can do it at that time? And then you see exactly the amount of people that are able to attend. Super easy. What could be an educational use of WhatsApp for teaching English? Other than sending information like that, but what could you do? Yes?
Send video to the students through it.
You could send videos, you could send links or anything to complete. Love it.
And as you mentioned at the beginning, speaking about WhatsApp, we find a lot of kind of app and programs that are not really for education, but we can adapt it for education. And in the case of WhatsApp, I know that we can serve a lot of kind of brands, a and so on. And as you said, how about the video, like it's like a video conference, we can do it nowadays by WhatsApp.
And I think that's really important because it's not that these were made for education. It's that we found a purpose for these tools in education. And so anything that you guys tinker with, that you think maybe it would be cool to introduce it to my teenagers in class, because they could use it for this or that. That is a teaching tool. Yes, a new hand.
Something that I didn't know that to do in WhatsApp is to make a test. And I think it's helpful because you can even prepare it for evaluate
I told you.
a lesson. And send it to the student.
Yes.
And you see the answer.
So you can make a test. It's a lot easier than having to actually type and print something out. Super. And things like even Telegram, where Telegram was also big during the pandemic because it was a lot more private. When you're trying to keep private, sensitive information, it's good to know what the policies are for the applications that you're using. You're not just asking a bunch of teenagers to sign up and to use the platform. You're understanding that when I ask you to do that, I'm going to keep your information safe. I know that there are guidelines and rules that can protect you in the event of something happening. And I know that I have access to how I monitor that information so that kids are not just joined in a community doing their own thing. No. As the educator, I have access to that information. Another one that I want to show was Flipgrid. And Flipgrid for students. Flipgrid is super cool because I think it's kind of just like TikTok, but with a more serious purpose. And so things like applications like Flipgrid basically allow you to present multiple videos that the kids have pre-recorded, and you can divide them by subject. And then the kids that have access to those courses will be able to comment. So in a way, it's very similar to 360 learning, but 360 learning is a little bit more like administrative. Flipgrid is all about video. It's about content. It's about how do I make a short but concise presentation, and how do I share it with my classmates. The final step then is that once I share it with my classmates are able to give me back feedback, and I have the recorded response. So me as an English teacher, if I'm seeing that the kids are recording content, I can assess them by how they're pronouncing things, right? I can assess the content that they've used. When they upload it and I see the student's response, I can see how my students are spelling things, because even if it's a forum, you're not talking to me like you're texting. You have expectations as an educator. So you're looking at sentence structure, you're looking at grammar use, you're looking at the definition of the words that they're actually using. Flipgrid, super cool, I highly recommend it. The next one we have, next ones are quizzes and Kahoot. Are you guys familiar with either one of those?
Yeah.
Yeah? Which one? Quizzes and Kahoot. Could you explain very briefly what they're for?
I always use for evaluations.
Yeah.
Yeah. For a topic, for example, you can use image pictures, images, or videos something, and then you can make an evaluation, you proof, or like an example more dynamic than the other one. The students get pictures, images, and they get responses in the questions.
And why do you say it's more dynamic?
Because we can integrate the pictures or in things that are more interactive and visual
Yeah.
for the student.
Yeah. So you have multiple ways to present that information, but something that he said is that it's an assessment. So you get to evaluate content and knowledge. And when I was using Kahoot, I thought that the coolest thing about Kahoot is that we were all sharing how sometimes students get really distracted when they're using applications. But when you have applications or websites like Kahoot, Kahoot is able to let you build teams or for them to answer individually. And as the time is running out, and I think it's very similar in quizzes también, as the time is running out, they get to see that there's a timer and they have to respond really fast. And so I think Dominicans are very competitive in their learning.
It's a competition, and they have
Yeah.
they have
The challenge, yeah.
They have the challenge to win.
Mm-hmm.
They are learning all the time.
And it's a very healthy challenge, like he's saying, because not only are they learning, they're really feeling the rush, they want to get it right. But when you use tools like Kahoot, it's not about just using it and watching what happens on screen. What happens after I answer a question and I see that Team A got it right and Team B got it wrong? What could be a follow-up for that? You could have Team A explain why their answer was correct. You could have Team B ask or answer, what do you think you guys would have done different? What was your mistake? There are always follow-up lessons, and I think the important thing to remember here is that technology does not function by itself. When we integrate tools into our classroom, we are guides. We're not there to just present information and let it happen. You're there to lead the way. Kids are there to find their purpose and meaning, but you have the control of the way they go. So anytime you use Kahoot or anything else like that, always go back to the group and ask them, what was different? What gave you the answer? Always use those critical thinking questions. So this is a short tutorial for Kahoot. So if you guys notice, Kahoot also has the added benefit that there are already presentations and games made. So if you are an EFL teacher and you're not sticking to just teaching verbs, but you want to add content to that. So maybe there's a quiz talking about different action verbs and they have different images, or maybe you're doing teams and you want to create your own version. You have all of these options so that you get to choose what the content that your students are going to be assessed on. for content. When we talk about tools for content, we're talking about where can I get my information. If I'm doing research and I want to talk about geographic formations, I could go to Google, but you guys know if you go to Google, you're going to be doing a lot of monitoring because you don't really know what comes up on Google. If you go to Google Scholar, you would have research papers where you know that they've been published by scientists, and now you know that this is credible information. It's good. Epic is one of my favorites, and I used it a lot in the pandemic to teach reading. The cool thing about Epic, just like reading A through Z, you have to pay for, and they are leveled readers. Are you guys familiar with leveled readers?
Yes.
Okay, and leveled readers are these packets of books that are divided into levels. And so for reading A through Z, for example, the first level would be AA. And you have a 4-page book about I go. I go to school, I go to the park, I go to my mom's house. That's it, very simple, because you're teaching the kids how to decode language. When you have websites like Reading A through Z, you can access the books online, so you can have like a PDF version of the book that you can download, you can print it, you can make it into a book. Or you have the Raz Kids version of it, which is the application. And when you go to the Raz Kids application, you can download it on the app, and that is where you get to record students reading whatever they're presented on the screen. And so in order for them to go from level to level, they have to pass that reading test. Even with things like Raz Kids, you have to monitor what's happening with the students. You can't just leave them to read, because what happens is that a lot of them, they go through the pages and they're not reading anything, and they'll say, I finished the book. But as a teacher, you can see whether they actually read some of it or if they just skipped it and how much it took them. So this is what reading A through Z looks like.
The level up section is where it is books, filled with books at your child's level. It's organized pretty easy here. You can't hear the book being read, but when you listen to the book, you will earn 10 stars. So then once you finish all of those books, you will move up a level. The reading room has other options as well. Then if you go back to, oh, I went too far. If you go back to the Green Planet, which is Sprout, if you haven't done this yet, you will do a very small assessment where it places you, and then you will end up doing phonics journeys with friends. And that is it.
So for Raz Kids, each kid has their account, and each kid has their password, so you don't get to make the mistake of assigning. You can assign a book to a specific level or to a specific student. So with Raz Kids, you don't get to make the mistake of, oh, I assigned a different book that I didn't mean to, or maybe Fulano was reading something that he wasn't supposed to. No, it gives you the sequence. With Epic, for example, with Epic, the big difference here is that you have access to books, but they're not necessarily monitored. So part of teaching English as a foreign language is to create interest. And oftentimes, the way that we create interest is through fiction books, through nonfiction books, through exploration, through trying to relate with the student. When you go to Epic, you have access to the classics like Three Billy Goats Gruff, Three Little Pigs, and you also have different versions of those classic books. Not just that, but you also have a very different collection of books in case it's not just for pedagogy. So if you saw the Raz Kids books, they focused on structure, sentence structure. So farm animals. The cow is black. The cow is walking. The cow, they have a pattern because what you're trying to do is get the kid to repeat that pattern until he memorizes it. With Epic, you have access to all sorts of nonfiction and fiction books. So you're reading just for pleasure. And for Epic, you can create an educator account that you don't have to pay for unless you want to pay for it. But for reading A through Z, your school would have to get a license. So you do have to pay for it in order to build those groups. For content, we also have Khan Academy. Who has heard of Khan Academy? Khan Academy is a web. Yes, you know it?
I already saw Khan Academy, but I didn't use it because most of the things that I saw there is math and science.
So during the pandemic, they were very focused on math and science. And they still kind of are, but they're trying to branch out because they've turned into this bigger educational tool. And now you can basically focus on different subjects where all of the content is pre-approved, it's all very specialized, and it's all very monitored. So a lot of the content here was actually edited by academics, people in academia. If you need your kids to do a research project, Khan Academy would be one of the platforms that you could use. And then finally, for practicing any language, not just English, we all know Duolingo, right? This is basically like free publicity for them. Everybody knows Duolingo. How does Duolingo help? What can we do? What can we do?
I don't use it. I just have so you can use as a test to see where you can start with students. It's like a diagnostic. What the student have and what you have to improve with the students.
Good. What else do we use Duolingo for?
It helps you for pronunciation, writing, and what else? Speaking and listening.
How does it help you with writing?
So it gives you a word, and then a word in Spanish, and then you have to write it in English.
Excellent. So, yes, or a sentence. So Duolingo is quite integrated, especially because, or specifically because, it was an app designed to teach a language. And so Duolingo is also leveled. It accommodates to the level of the student. So if the app knows that you're making too many mistakes, maybe it's not time for you to move forward with some content. Let's go back and let's review what we have. But Duolingo is super fun because you can just kind of learn any language on the go. And so what would be like an integrated use of Duolingo in a classroom?
Carla, and Duolingo implement, develop a specific competence, writing, listening, speaking, and reading.
So how could we integrate Duolingo in a classroom, for example?
Once I was with a group of students, I took a specific break, and I said everyone has to download Duolingo. So they start from the beginning, and every time I was to the classroom, I asked them, what is your level in Duolingo? And they were learning, and they had to write every new word that they were learning in Duolingo.
And I think Duolingo, in my experience using specifically educational apps like reading A through Z, for example, as kids, I think Duolingo is a lot more user-friendly. You don't have to really navigate a lot to know what to do with Duolingo. It's super easy to use. And also the monitoring, the tracking that Duolingo does for the learner progress, I think is super, super easy to track. So maybe you're doing small group instruction in your classroom. You have a group that's reading, maybe you have a group that's practicing pronunciation. The group that's practicing pronunciation with the ICT tools, are they going to be doing it by themselves?
No.
No. You should always be going back and guiding the process, just to make sure that they're really doing it. Okay? And so finally, before we formally wrap this up, I would like to give you guys the space to make any questions or to, I don't know, anything else I can offer for you guys? If you have questions, concerns, comments, advice, any apps that maybe you use that I didn't mention?
I use with students to evaluate the grade they are with lingua.com. Lingua.com. For example, Salustiana always is talking with us about the grade they are. For example, A1, A2, B1, B2, C1, C2. And Lingua.com has the advantage to give you free topics or free tests, dialogues, conversations, where you can evaluate as students in that way. After you finish to read, you have an audio that can make the pronunciation of all tests for you, and also some questions that you can respond or answer. And after when you finish, they give you a qualification of what you get. So that is really good because there are some premium tests, but they are the only one they are free and you can use them. And it is not always for English. It's also for Spanish, Portuguese, Italian, German, and all English they can teach.
So for grading purposes, we have Lingua. Lingua for grading in different languages, but you also, if you want to know specifically what level your student has in, say, a UK format, you get to access it over there, because there are different grading systems. Excellent, thank you. Anybody else? Yes?
Okay. I have a personal question. First, have you ever worked in a public school?
I have not.
Okay. But did you, I saw in your biography that you work in a pre-kindergarten school?
Yes, in a public, in a private school.
Okay, that's right. So, which app or websites that you show us already did you use, and which one was the best one for you?
I've used all of them because I try to not present something that I do not know about. And something that I try to keep in mind also is that where I work now is a semi-public institution because we're an NGO, but our lower levels function as a public school. And so in the public school, we developed the STEM program, which is the one that I coordinate. And so all of these apps were tested to some degree with the primary level students, with the assumption that if they work for primary level students, for secondary students, it's going to have a much better use. And so all of those, depending on the purpose that you're trying to achieve, I would allow kids to use. Understanding public school, for example, I wouldn't do something like a collaborative platform, because you're gonna have more than 40 kids onto a document, haciendo y deshaciendo, basically. Entonces, I understand that public school is like, if you're trying to do small groups and you're in public school and you get an assignment, maybe try it out with 5 kids. Don't try it out with all 60 kids, okay? Like, we gotta keep things aterrizados in reality, right? If you're doing small group instruction and you have your purpose, which is what we were talking about, try to keep it very specific to your learning goals. So don't do something collaborative with 60 students. Try it with 3, try it with 5. Give your students rotational options. So I'm not gonna have a single presentation day. Maybe I'm gonna have a week of presentations, and in that week, we're gonna see 1 to 2 presentations, right? Because I respect you guys a lot who work in public school. I get it, it's very difficult. But there's also a way to start doing these things.
It's good, but because we have the opportunity to work with different apps. But what I'm trying to say is that there are some apps that we cannot use it. For example, like collaborating and stuff like that, we can do it, but if we are in a classroom working with them, because they're used to go to another pages or they don't know how to use it, but you explain it already, but they say they don't know, and how can I do this, how can I do that? So that's what I asked you.
Okay, who's in public school here?
Everyone.
Not everyone. Most of you, but not everyone. Most of you are in public school. This is what I want to present to you. If your district has the amazing idea of integrating ICT tools in education. And they're not giving you the parameters to do it appropriately. Your issue starts with the government sector that is making you do that, okay? I can't undo it, I can't help it, I can just kind of give you the ideas of how to implement around it. Unfortunately, there are things that if we're going to keep having 60 kids in a classroom and understand that that is good education, you're gonna keep having that same problem 20 years down the line. So your Ministry of Education needs to understand that that is not developmentally appropriate. And in order for you to do the best use, to make the best use of the ICT tools, you're going to need more than one teacher per classroom, which does not happen all the time. And you're going to need an excellent internet connection, which the Lord knows does not happen all the time.
I don't have internet where I work.
Exactly. So why are you here, sis? No, of course, I get it, but this is what I mean, tú sabes, yo sé dónde tú vienes. I get it completamente. Pero, your organism, your government has to help you. I'm trying to help you help yourself, help your government.
I just ask you because I think that there are many apps, and I know already because I took some classes about technology already, and I try to use them.
Yeah.
But it's so difficult to use them in a classroom when you don't have all the tools that you need.
Yeah. How many students do you have?
Depends because I have to go to many classrooms. So sometimes I have to teach 90 or 80 students, different classroom, 35 per classroom. So it's different.
And so you have more students to keep track of per section.
Exactly.
Carla, I think so that, I'm sorry, I think so that three projects like public school.
I'm sorry?
I think so that three projects like public school.
O sea, we have a convenio con el ministerio, you know, pero no, we don't work specifically as just an NGO.
Exactly.
Entonces, we have public school sections, but we don't teach like they do in public school. But even when I got to the Dream Project 2 years ago, we had to make a case for the fact that we have to reduce class sizes and we need more than one teacher in a classroom. That's non-negotiable. So when I tell you that when you use these apps, if you're just gonna let your students use it, I know that that's not a reality for you guys.
Yes.
I know that some of you guys are gonna be with all 60 kids or all 40 kids, and they're all gonna be on their tablets, and you're the only person in the classroom. I understand that completely. But I think that more to, okay, then entiendo, but more to the point of this workshop itself is trying to slowly introduce the tools that could begin to help you, so that you're not familiar with them, you know, so that you're not unfamiliar with them.
I use them. I use most of them that you show there.
Yeah.
But I try to use all of them with different class and stuff, but it was not successful.
Yeah.
So.
And so, you know what, teaching is also trial and error. Maybe it didn't work this time, maybe it could work for a different group. It's trying to find a combination that does work.
No.
And also, you guys, talk to your people in charge. Be like, hey, you want me to use this? Why am I using it? And you're not helping me out.
But in some of the schools, some we have here, the teachers that are here, and they have like computer laboratories, so they can use it. What I did is that if I want them to learn something, I give them, for example, when I finish a unit, I absolutely finish with the grammar, the vocabularies, and stuff like that. I give them like divide per groups, and I give them a grammar, and I give them the opportunity to create their own pieces, and then present their pieces, and then the other students can just answer the quizzes that they do, and just like that.
Yeah, and that's a good strategy because you're making them accountable for whatever they do and whatever they don't. They know that they're gonna have to come up here and present. If you want your grade, that's what you have to do. Thank you.
Thank you.
And the pink.
I have
Cake is an app that you can listen conversations, and also it gives you the opportunity to practice the speaking. I consider that it will help a lot the students. They can use it in their house and improve.
Awesome, thank you. So that's cake, right?
Cake.
Cake. Como bizcocho?
Yes.
Okay, cake. Excellent. Anybody else? Any apps that I don't know about? Anything you want to ask me? Yes.
Google have slides. It's like a PowerPoint.
Yes.
But I used to add extensions. First Text is one that I used to use because it's a collaborative app that I make the presentation, I make the exercise, and the students bring their computer because my students have internet and they have their computer. They work in little groups and they answer the exercise, and I know where the students are working, what the students have a field and what they have done wrong. And sometimes I used to present in the with the projector that they can see where everybody is working on. And I really like it because sometimes if I can keep, if they can't complete in the classroom, they can do it at home. I make a link. They have a passport that they give them, and they have to complete it. And I sometimes use it.
Yeah, that's cool. You actually bring up a very important fact, and it's that there are extensions. They're not just necessarily specific websites or anything like that. But in Google Chrome, you have a bunch of extensions that you guys can download and use it for specific purposes like that. And basically what you're trying to create is, if you for some reason don't love Google Classroom, now you have the option of doing specific tasks that Google Classroom does. Thank you. Yes?
It's a question. How can we use ICT in high school?
So many ways. If you're trying to present information, you have access to collaborative but also communication tools such as Flipgrid, which is the one where they record their videos and they present it and kids get to give their feedback. You can also use PowerPoint or Google Slides where everybody gets to modify the same document. And you could also use the different worksheets that they mentioned, like worksheets, for example, where they're actively filling out the things that they learned. How else could we use it in high school?
High school.
What ideas do you guys have for your colleagues? How could you use it in high school?
So normally, I use a web page. Its name is English Blog, where you can work grammar, listening, reading, and different topics. So the other thing is you need to check your content. And it has to be according with the lesson you have there. So it doesn't cover all the needs you have in your teaching plan. That means you need to make some accommodation of them.
Yeah.
So according with your lesson plan, so you choose the topic you have in that web page. The name is English Blog.
And super important as educators, anytime you give content, even if it's from the best website and everybody knows about it, you have to check that the content is appropriate. Because you're the one who taught your students, and you can't give them content that they are not ready for. And so all of these apps, all of those content things, make sure that you review it and that you become the expert first, right? Yes?
There is a question to the teacher. Can you repeat again the page?
Yeah, English Club. Así mismo,
English
English
Club.
Club.
Okay,
We have different windows where you select listening, doing listening. You have the place for the grammar. You have different grammar, all modal verbs and things. But you have to how I told you before, you need to check your lesson plan, and when it's according with your lesson, then you choose them. So if not, you have to leave. How many? Some of them don't match with your lesson plan.
Excellent. Thank you.
Sorry, teacher, and when you have time, please send a link.
Yeah,
On our language group.
Yes. And so I can also send you guys a list, I'll do it through Salesiana. I can send you a list of all the applications that I meant, so that when you guys are on your free time, make sure that you explore it if you plan on using it, okay?
So, Carla, at the same time, we have to organize about that we have to looking for and when you need about the unit, because our focus now is to develop competence. The competence is a process that you have to know what to do, right? First, at the first time you have to say, okay, you have to do this. I know, I have a theory, but the most important thing that we have to implement process, procedure that you have to do, okay, it's a competence, when it's possible to do something, right?
Yes.
Right, but regular, so depend, you have to step by step, one more time, 2 times, 3 times, depend the time that you need, so as a teacher.
Perfect.
Right?
Thank you. Yes.
Para finalizar, final. So we at the end of the day we have a big challenge. So we as a teacher, we have to work hard to find those resources we need. Because we have a lot of different options in the internet in the website. But at the end of the day, which one can I choose for my student and that they can learn or is according with the program that the Ministerio de Educación have? Because it's another thing, it's a little bit tricky when we work with students. It's not just to present a tool, use a tool. This how we can accommodate those needs we have with those programs we use.
And I love what you're saying, because I'm not a big boss. I coordinate a couple of programs, so I'm the boss of a few people, but I'm not like a big boss. But something that I've learned in my teaching trajectory is that when you work as teams. And if you need to know something about a student, who do you go to? Do you go to the administration to know what the reading level for your student is? No, you go to the teacher, because the teacher knows their student best. Anytime you use or you don't use a tool, you have to know why you're doing it. And so specifying the purpose is super, super, super critical. You cannot just say, I'm going to use this app for the rest of the school year. No, you have to start your school year and then say, oh, I think this app would really help me learn grammar along with my students. Oh, I think it would be a really cool tool for them to actually make a presentation. So you start with that, okay? Always, always, always remember you guys are the experts. Maybe what works for me is not what works for you, okay? Yes.
I like to talk to you. I used to use Genial.
Yes.
I sometimes, when I need that, all the students speak, I make a will. And I have the student have to talk. You have
Yes.
to, or sometimes I mention their name. Because sometimes you have 10 students, but 5 is working, or 5 are participating in your class, and the rest are not paying attention.
And that's excellent, because it's a participation tool, basically. And so you could use it in the classroom while you're all physically in a classroom, but you could also use it during a Zoom meeting. You could also use it during a Google Meet meeting. Because especially if you have a classroom of students in a virtual call, there's always a few that never say anything, and their cameras are off, and they're probably not even there the whole time, and you don't really know. So tools like that help with participation and regulating, very important. It's not just about teaching.
In the same app or tools, you can use triggers. You make some questions, and all the students have to participate because they are interested in what you are showing them in the classroom.
Yeah. Thank you. Anybody else? Yes?
We're talking about how to learn how to use ICT. And I asked, what is the base to learn English?
You asked which ones I would use to teach high school English.
What is the best digital tool to
But
learn English?
that's subjective because you're the teacher, so you're facilitating the content, right? These are things that are gonna help you present content to the student or to engage the student so that they learn better. This is not meant to just teach English. This is going to help you teach English. And so what is the best for me, like I said, might not be the best for you. Some people really like 360 learning. I think that there's too much going on for 360 learning, especially, I wouldn't use it in a public school setting, for example. But if I'm doing a private lesson, a private school lesson, and I know that my kids can handle it because they know how to use ICT tools, I might be using 360 learning. If I'm trying to do a quiz, but I don't want to spend all my time typing it or dictating it, I have tools like the live worksheet, I have tools like quizzes, I have tools like Kahoot, where you access the content that's already made, you display it in the classroom, and then you start playing a trivia game. So it'll give you the questions, and it'll let the students answer from their phones as you're using them. Does that make sense a little bit? Remember, these are tools, but they don't replace active language learning. Okay? Yes?
Yes, just adding a comment about ICT tools is that we can start using, for example, Google Drive or Quizzes or Click, but also that it's recommended if not always use the same application or the same program, because the students are going to get bored of using the same app. And I know all of these applications have something in common, but I have hearing you and listening to you, and each application has something different. So we can use, depending on the grammar, depending on the vocabulary of the lesson that we're teaching, we can use the different applications like Flip, Quiz, Kahoot. You know that we don't need to use the same application of just having a.
Thank you. So you guys know that in school you used to present with a poster. That's how it was done. You used to stand up, you would make a poster, you would talk about it, that's it, call it a day. These tools are just creative outlets. It's just a different way for me to show you how I'm thinking as a learner. Especially things like Google Drive where the changes are saved. I can see, oh, I saw that Fulano was actually the one who corrected Fulanita. So it seems like Fulanita knows a lot about grammar or punctuation. Maybe it helps my grading, you know? It's about finding what it is that you need help with and using these tools actively. But you also have to take the time to explore. You have to explore yourself. If you don't have any more questions or comments, thank you so much. Thank you for breakfast. Thank you for inviting me here. It's been a pleasure, and I've really enjoyed all of your questions. I hope that I was of some help. And I always, don't forget the organic part of teaching, but always try to stay up to date, because everything is always changing so fast. And educators really need to be at the forefront of it, okay? Thank you.
Using all the material.
La presentación.
Yes. Para compartirla. Vamos a dar la oportunidad a ese dominicano, ¿verdad que sí? Porque caramba. Muy buena, te damos las gracias, Carla, de manera particular y especial, en nombre de nuestra directora distrital, su directora y todo el equipo. Está bien, el audio es buena, lo escuchamos bien, porque hay un grupo que trabajando bien. Y se hace necesario nosotros saber que después de esta disertación, tal vez muchos se mantuvieron receptivos, ¿verdad? Y es bueno mejor recibir, ahí, que emitir. Pero también es bueno la próxima vez, porque habrá una próxima vez, de nosotros poder participar. No sé si trajeron las preguntas, si se me pusieron un poquito tal vez nervioso. Ella le puede dedicar 5 minutos más y las preguntas que le dijimos, que le solicitamos, si están altas, pueden hacerla. Pueden abrir su laptop y hacer la pregunta, no se vayan con dudas, porque puedo decirle, para que está grabando, pero no nos estamos diciendo de frente, ¿verdad? Podemos decirle que en este punto, que nosotros, como equipo que somos, ¿verdad? En el Departamento de Lenguas Extranjeras, lo que queremos lograr en las actividades, todas y cada una que se van desarrollando, es saber que cada una de ellas, que cada una de esas actividades para implementarla, de nosotros saber que le vamos a sacar una sustancia. Entonces, si las preguntas están ahí, vamos a hacerlas. Si se repiten, ¿verdad? La pregunta, entonces ya no la hago. Porque si la trajo Wanda y la trajo Dani, y Dani fue que la hizo, pues entonces le vamos a dar la oportunidad que la hiciese y todo salir modificado, ¿verdad? Que es la idea, porque es educativo. Todo lo que estamos haciendo es educativo por el enfoque. Porque el enfoque nuestro es para todo, pero hay una parte específica de nosotros que queremos que en la estructura de la inquietudes que pude absorber, ¿de qué se trata? Primero hacemos un overview de lo que yo quiero, voy a hacer algo holístico general en una unidad, así, sustanciando para tal vez aquellos que tenemos un poquito del entendimiento y no entendemos grandes rasgos, 100% el idioma inglés, porque es un tú y nosotros manejamos el one. Entonces vamos a darnos la oportunidad ahora, antes de salir, de lo que pudieron manejar muy bien al 100%, pero tal vez otros no. Y en eso consiste la edificación. En nosotros reconocer que tal vez tengo una debilidad, tengo que mejorarla, no pude lograr mucho, pero yo me mantengo estática, pero tampoco me voy clara con lo que hay. Entonces, ¿cómo implemento? Si no me voy clara. Entonces, tenemos que saber que en una unidad, acorde al enfoque, si lo que yo quiero lograr, por donde comienzo, con mi gran tema, acorde al currículo, luego de ese gran tema, yo tengo que ponerme una estructura en inglés que me dice a mí que voy a hacer eso a la hora de planificar. Luego, ¿qué voy a hacer? Saber que tengo, ¿qué voy a perseguir? ¿Qué quiero enfocar? La gramática, ¿qué le voy a proyectar primero a mis estudiantes? ¿Qué le proyecto a ella? ¿Cuál es mi inquietud? Que yo saber por dónde comenzar y llevar una directriz, que era lo que decía la profe de...
¿Se puede enseñar por ahí?
Yo Casey, muy bien, ella decía que tenemos que saber que estamos bajo un marco con un europeo, ¿verdad que sí? Un A1, un A2, dependiendo del nivel. Si yo estoy en un nivel de secundaria, pero yo entiendo mis estudiantes, tengo 20, nada más hay 2 que están en ese nivel y el otro están en primaria, yo lo que voy a sabiamente a ver cómo puedo nivelar, pero acorde al área específica, ya el currículum general, entonces otro momento, porque el enfoque me dice a mí que es desarrollar competencias. Una cosa es que desarrollemos lo conceptual y dejemos de un lado lo procedimental. ¿Qué es lo conceptual? Yo sé mucho, son 3 momentos de los saberes, saber hacer y saber ser. Entonces, yo sé, pero ¿qué yo hago con ese saber hacer? Que hay que tener, ¿verdad? Que desarrollar un poquito más, comenzando por quien le está hablando, o sea, Luciana Suárez, junto a un santo, quien estamos al frente, Dios nos está dando la bendición de continuar fortaleciendo esto. Entonces, no se vayan. ¿Quiénes trajeron la pregunta? Levanten la mano. Entonces, si notarán cuántas personas hay acá, ¿quiénes trajeron la pregunta que se les solicitó? Vamos a ver, yo quiero ver cuántas manos levantadas. Uy. Nos vamos. Pero ¿cuántas manos? ¿Cuántas preguntas hay de las que les solicitamos?
O sea, pero una pregunta sobre la recomendación de las aplicaciones.
Sí, corazón, fue que le enviamos la convocatoria diciéndole que vinieran con preguntas acorde al tema. Es para enriquecernos.
In my caso, in my case, I consider that she was talking about everything that you sent to us. That's why I don't have any question, because she answered.
Ok, entonces, entonces eso nos dice, que todos se van claros. Wilkin y quien les habla, a Giovanni, ya podemos saber que también Luciano Benjamín, cariñosamente le decimos Benja, le vamos a dar todo el equipo seguimiento a esa área específica. Entonces, cuando estemos en las aulas, estamos todos claros, vamos a seguir aclarándonos si hay alguna duda que hay en el aula Y le damos gracias a Carla. De
Antes de, ¿ustedes conocen Prexi?
La Prexi.
Que para presentación, los chicos cuando utilizan Prexi se emocionan.
Antes de Canva estaba Prexi, ¿verdad?
Sí, porque de una imagen grande, por ejemplo, presenta una cabeza, puede decir, y usted a los ojos, y ahí usted y a ella directamente, a los chicos les encanta usar
Te
Prexi.
crea como una historia, o sea, si
Sí.
tú tienes el personaje del panda, como tú dijiste, la próxima parte de tu presentación se va a ir por el ojo del panda y
Sí,
se
y
crea
ahí
otro
puede otro
fondo
fondo.
que ve animado.
Sí.
Muy chulo.
Sí, entonces lleva la imaginación, que nosotros necesitamos eso, ¿verdad?
Exacto.
La imaginación y Magic, es la idea. Entonces nosotros enviamos un link, Wilkin Thomas, que coordina francés, de igual manera ya le estamos haciendo el compromiso de investigar, porque no solamente inglés, vamos a motivar el francés. Vamos a tratar de llevar de una manera, no con grandes rasgos, pequeñitos, porque los pequeños detalles hacen las grandes cosas. Lo importante es iniciar. Así estamos motivando la comunicación, ¿verdad que sí? En el inglés, por ser universal, pero vamos a motivar también el francés, comenzando por nosotros dos. ¿Entendemos eso? Para luego motivar a ustedes, porque no podemos dar lo que no tenemos. Entonces, vamos a ver cómo nos evalúan así, en vivo aquí, a ver cómo a la conferencista, y a nosotros que nos atrevimos a arriesgarnos, porque tal vez la vieron joven, ¿verdad que sí? Con un impacto. Y esa es la conferencista.
I listen that she said that she has 28, yes, but you look younger. You look like 16 years old. Oh my God.
Ya en este momento, ¿verdad? Dijimos que estamos utilizando el one, nuestra lengua materna, pero lo que quiero hacer como Wanda, utilizar el to, perfecto.
Bueno.
Vamos a ver dos participaciones porque tomamos el tiempo, ¿verdad?
En cuanto a la actividad, me parece grandiosa. Lo necesitamos muchísimo, sobre todo por la práctica del inglés. Todos sabemos que en las escuelas públicas no se practica tanto así el inglés. Entonces yo recientemente estaba diciendo que yo estaba perdiendo, porque cuando uno trabaja con extranjero, uno habla y habla en inglés y se apropia de la lengua. Pero cuando tú trabajas con los dominicanos, tu nativo, de tu lengua, entonces el inglés que se enseña en la escuela pública no puede hacerlo tampoco muy amplio, pues uno pierde lo que uno sabe. Entonces, de verdad, para mí, grandioso. Y además con las aplicaciones también. Muy bueno.
So I think it's very important for us to tell you how we felt with this conference, and it was really amazing. I felt very satisfied with everything I needed, all the advices that you gave us. I was waiting for coming here and ask the other teachers what apps they use and getting all the knowledge, because they were always talking about their students being very engaged and their classes being very dynamic, and I was just trying to figure out how they do it. And all the comments that you gave us were very, very helpful, at least in my case, because I didn't know anything about teaching or using the ICT. And well, I just feel like now I have more knowledge and I feel a little more prepared for applying it when I can apply it, because at school we didn't have like an internet connection, as you said, and we didn't have all the tools for that. But whenever I have the chance, I am definitely sure that I'm going to be able to do it. And thank you so much. Thank you.
So del 1 al 10, ¿cuál es el número?
Qué bueno que aquí no hay maestro que dice que no se puede dar el 10 porque el 10 es una nota perfecta y que se quede.
Was the conference was like the topic that you sang us was magistrate, was excellent. So now I have a lot of those tools to implement in my class. A topic that you teach us in songs that I get from my parents.
And what I thought it was dynamic is actually using the Minecraft that I didn't have that in mind. And it was like
And there are videos, so they have Minecraft educational, but there are videos teaching you how teachers, especially in high school, how teachers use Minecraft in education. It's super amazing.
Le voy a hacer una propuesta también. Está Carla, ella dispone de su tiempo, solamente tiene que contratarnos a nosotros. Y también ella puede hacer, ustedes preparen algo en su centro educativo, pero por un tiempo, porque ya, ¿verdad? Pero sé que nos apoya. ¿Podemos volver a traer?
España. La dama mencionó en Minecraft, igual que la acá, ustedes como Minecraft tiene un alcance con los niños, sobre todo, muy profundo, y la realidad virtual, sobre todo, entonces lo vamos a avanzar muy rápido. Ya hoy día la realidad virtual no va, dentro de poco, para que no va a sustituir la inteligencia artificial, pero ¿hay alguna, usted conoce alguna aplicación o alguna herramienta que dentro de la realidad virtual o la inteligencia artificial se pueda implementar para apoyar a los estudiantes?
Sí, tendría que buscar el nombre del programa, pero en STEM nosotros teníamos, primero, si tú quieres realidad virtual, necesitas los lentes. Si tú no tienes los lentes, hay una página que te proyecta el material que nosotros lo usamos en STEM, que era para conocer diferentes áreas geográficas, por ejemplo, el desierto, el bosque, abajo en el océano. Nosotros hicimos una exploración de los animales, de toda la biodiversidad, de la flora, y los niños tenían que ir descubriéndolo mientras ellos iban caminando, con su cosa de realidad virtual, iban describiendo, habían algunos que iban, como estaba proyectado en una pantalla, el resto podría decir cosas que él quizás no estaba viendo, porque cuando uno está en realidad virtual literalmente es tu realidad, y quizás si yo estoy volteado para acá yo no vea lo que hay. Tú sabes, como realmente es cuestión de perspectiva. Pero voy a averiguar cuál es el programa que nosotros usamos para ver si tú puedes descargarlo a través de la página, aunque tú no tengas lo lento.
Un compromiso para todo, no es para él. Él se manifestó.
Exacto. Sí.
Wilkie.
Nada, igualmente me siento también muy satisfecho con la presencia de nuestra conferencista aquí. Y estos grandes aportes que nos traen a todos, no solamente a ustedes, también de este lado, a Salustania y a todos los que estamos aquí presentes. Porque verdaderamente, sin duda alguna, el mundo pareciera como si girase más rápido, es decir, que las cosas están cambiando rápidamente. Y necesitamos irnos actualizando. Hablábamos ahorita, ¿verdad?, que si quizás esté un poquito rezagado en relación a cómo utilizar la TIC o alguna aplicación, ya no es una excusa. Un día de esto estaba en un taller por ahí, decía la persona encargada del taller, pregúntale al tío Google, ¿verdad? Porque ya no hay limitaciones en cuanto al conocimiento y en cuanto a cómo hacerlo. Es decir, si yo no conozco una aplicación, solamente no tengo que preguntarle a Google, solamente tengo que preguntarle a YouTube, how to use that, y de una vez va a aparecer muchísimos videos, muchísimos contenidos que me van a orientar de cómo yo puedo utilizar una aplicación. Incluso la conferencista presentaba un pequeño tutorial, ¿verdad?, de cómo usar, creo que era Zoom, ¿verdad?, porque están ahí los materiales. Ahora yo necesito la motivación, el deseo de querer hacer las cosas mejores. Entonces, si no me actualizo, obviamente, lo que pasa es que me quedo rezagado, no estoy acorde a los tiempos y no puedo dar los resultados de lugar que demandan las eficiencias de la sociedad hoy día. Entonces, queremos motivarme. Siempre habrá obstáculos, eso es indiscutible. En cualquier cosa que decidamos hacer, habrá obstáculos. No siempre serán perfectas las cosas. Ahora, por ello, no voy a dejar de insistir o de intentar mejorar, superar o avanzar. Entonces, queremos motivarle a que podamos seguir avanzando en lo que es la implementación de la TIC en la práctica de la enseñanza, ¿verdad?, del idioma inglés como lengua extranjera en nuestros centros educativos. Es una herramienta poderosa, una herramienta muy motivadora para los adolescentes, para los jóvenes, para todas las edades. Impacta bastante a los estudiantes porque a ellos les gusta mucho esto. Entonces, vamos a hacer el esfuerzo. Nos han traído buenas ideas, buenas recomendaciones, un sinnúmero de aplicaciones que podemos utilizar, por lo que vamos a atender a estas orientaciones y darle seguimiento, que yo sé que vamos a llegar más veces. Me dan un permiso.
Bueno, continuando con lo de Wiki para cerrar, porque porque acordamos que el tiempo, lo importante de una actividad es que lo sustancioso, no sobrecargar, ¿verdad? Entonces, hay dos motivaciones, la intrínseca y la extrínseca. Vamos a seguir, porque ustedes somos así, el equipo de lengua extranjera, somos motivados intrínsecamente. Es una motivación que no hay que dar, sale. Entonces, nada, estamos más que agradecidos, le damos de una manera incondicional a Benjamín, quien ha hecho un papel relevante. Sin él, en este momento, y los demás compañeros, no hubiese sido posible, pero menos sin ustedes, menos sin tal. O sea, que somos una máquina perfecta que solo Dios ha hecho, el ser humano. Nada lo va a sustituir. Entonces, para la próxima vez, ya nosotros sabemos que podemos gozar con Carla y un equipo de Dream Project que están ahí. Tenemos muchos recursos humanos y ya comenzamos a implementar de la mejor manera. Esto le vamos a dar más seguimiento, porque ese tema de la inteligencia artificial debe de llamarnos la atención a todos y a todas las áreas de formación. Tengan un buen día, que Dios nos lo lleve bien y que la próxima vez sea más edificante. Y nuestra foto al final, no sé qué es. Esa va, venga para salir en tiempo real. Claro, ¿verdad que sí?
Porque Robert salió. Fue quien, permíteme tu celular. Hello. Y vete para allá. Sí, no importa, ya lo voy a dejar. Vete. Todo. Vete. Abajo. Tanta gente buena moza, ¿eh?
Gracias.